grab a seat, and thanks for coming this morning. I know, how many people were here for the new grad student orientation yesterday? Okay, so, you guys get to spend 9 hours in grad school this week, but it's actually not bad. So thanks for coming, and I just kind of want to give you a heads up on what today's going to look like. Today is your legal rights and responsibilities. Hopefully it'll go quicker than the full 3 hours. The only kind of caveat to that is people who are presenting come at certain times. So just a little FYI, sometimes there's a lingering 5 or 10 minutes, and I apologize. I would by no means ever want to waste your time, but it just kind of happens on their schedules. So what we're going to be talking about today is our legal counsel for the university. Leslie Taylor is going to come and talk about kind of the legal perspective of being a TA and some of the things that you need to be aware of in terms of federal policy, university policy. And then our next presenter is Diane Latender, and she is coming from the Office of Affirmative Action. I think they have a new name. I'm not sure what it is. Okay. And she talks about sexual harassment, discrimination, things that you need to be concerned about, ways to avoid some of those things, and probably give you some examples, because unfortunately things that seem obvious have not been obvious in the past for some students, and it has created some serious conflicts. And then our final presenter is Brenna York, and she's sassy to say the least. And she comes from the Office of Disabilities, Veterans, and Reentry Services. So she talks a lot about students who come in who are coming back to school after potentially serving in Iraq, Afghanistan, and some of the needs that students have after coming back from war. And then also students who have disabilities, both learning disabilities, physical disabilities, maybe some mental disease, and the legal part of what you can and cannot ask with that specific student. And then also she talks about the reentry, so students who are non-traditional, who are coming back to school. And so these are, the people who are presenting today are really providing you a lot of the legal components as a TA for the institution. And so with that, I actually am going to turn it over to the Graduate School's interim dean, Dr. Ron Larson.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to work with the students. We are entrusting you with a pretty valuable commodity to us. Our students at Montana State University, we hope that you will treat them carefully, give them a wonderful experience. But I can tell you also that the reason we use GTAs is because we think it's important to help the next generation of professors learn how to teach. And so I hope you'll view this as a learning experience for you as well. Again, yesterday I told you that I spent 8 years in grad school. 2 of those years I had teaching appointments. And I had already worked in industry a couple of different places and thought that's what my career would be until I actually taught and found out that I liked that a whole lot better. And so some of you may discover that this may change your calling. I also wanted to tell you a story or two that I think might tie into what you will be hearing in the next day or so. I was involved with an outreach event that we had 5th and 6th grade boys in an organization. First day of that, I was the backup teacher, and this other guy comes in and goes, "Hi, I'm something, I don't remember his name, and this is Ron, and we want to be your friend." And I thought, oh great, we just lost the opening salvo. We just set up the teaching time to be a disaster so they can recover their attention and their respect. You going to address that and how to get started?
Oh, for your first day of class? Yes. So for those, I guess I just have a question. How many people here actually have, maybe if you have a master's or a TA before, how many people here have some level of teaching training? How many people here have received teaching training in your department? So about 10, maybe? And that's being generous. How many of you are nervous? Thank you. And yes, we will be addressing those. Tomorrow, there's another requirement to the TA orientation. It is a little different. It's a summit. It's conference style. We'll have 3 concurrent sessions. How many of you will be in the sciences? Nice. How many people for humanities? And then how many people will be doing grading as their primary duty?
Sorry.
Okay. So the great thing about what tomorrow is it provides, the way that the concurrent sessions work is that there will be not all the science-based teaching skills in 1 hour. They will be staggered. And so what you will be able to do is pick out what's specific to types of your responsibilities as TAs. For example, the first day of class is one that I do. It's my background actually is TA development and teaching development, and so the one that I do is how important the first day of class is, because it, like Ron just said, sets the stage for a long time to come, and that once the class kind of goes awry, sort of turning the ship is almost impossible. Not that it can't be done. A couple of the other things that we'll be talking about is subjective grading, dealing with difficult students, so students who maybe are a little challenging, overtake conversation. One is leading discussion. We have a student from physics who will be presenting on labs, running labs and running them effectively. Not that, granted you have a recipe book often in some labs, but in all reality, like it would be how to do that effectively. And then how many people here are math TAs? Several. Okay, so there is one suggestion, and that we have a person who will be presenting on designing a lesson plan for students who are in TA for the STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And I have a little asterisk that I would encourage the people who are in mathematics to go to that. She has some really great experience and lesson planning for our math students. Those are just to name a few. I will have an agenda for you early in the morning, and so you can pick that up. The first one starts at 9:30, so you'll have some time to read through that.
The other story I wanted to tell you about was my first semester as a teacher, as a graduate student. I had a class of 189 students, teaching, among other things, industrial chemistry. Somebody mentioned that yesterday. And we had to give these closed book quizzes on industrial chemistry. And I had a helper in that really large class, another TA, and she saw a guy with his notebook open on the chair in front of him, and he was looking over like this for his closed book test. So she walked over, and she grabbed that notebook with a flourish and walked across the room with it high in the air and flopped it down right next to me, and made sure that everyone in the room saw it. So what she had done is she made this cheating event a public event that everyone in the class was aware of. And when she plopped it down in front of me, she turned it over to me and made it my problem. And the other thing is this guy was 6'6" and a power lifter. So I had to deal with a brick wall who was caught cheating, and it was down my problem. And tell people how to deal with that?
Yeah. Yeah. I'll go to the difficult students one. Actually, one of our assistant deans, Melody Zidell, and Dr. Sue Monahan will be. And most of the sessions are run by TAs who are veteran TAs, and also I'll explain a little bit about the college teaching certificate in a little bit. They all have been trained as instructors. And then, yes, we will be dealing with some of the cheating and difficult student issues and plagiarism and how to handle that.
Interesting case, because I was the little man on the totem pole in this department, and the faculty got involved in it, and some of the faculty just wanted it to go away and just ignore it, and some of the faculty wanted to hang the guy in the courtyard at the end. And it was a really hairy situation to kind of work through and find a solution to. It took a while. We got it done eventually. Well, good luck. Today is the legalese. Tomorrow is the how-to.
Yes, very strategy-based. We will not be giving you content theory or student development. Might be addressed just in a sentence or two, but it's more about giving you tangible strategies, skills, and techniques that'll hopefully help you through your first semester for TA.
And for me, the teaching experience was revolutionary. Changed my life. I hope you have some of that kind of experience as well. I just enjoyed it. I hope you will, and hope you'll work well with the students and give them a great education. Pride the quality of the education that we have at Montana State University. You are a part of delivering that. We ask you to step up to that task. I'm going to head out to the next meeting.
I was going to say, are you double booked?
I am.
All right. Thanks, Matt. We have like 15 minutes, so I just have a few kind of things I wanted to discuss. Montana State last year, the graduate school started a certificate. It's a college teaching certificate. A lot of our students from across the disciplines. So I'm not just talking about education majors. It's people who are in the sciences. And in fact, if you were here yesterday, Michelle Teagues, who was on the student panel, is working on her college teaching certificate, and she's in chemistry. We have students from physics, we have students from math, we have students who are in Native American Studies master's programs, we do have students in education. And what's great is that as a cohort and as a group for the college teaching certificate program is that you start to make contacts across the disciplines, and you learn about techniques that are being done in other disciplines that actually can be morphed in such a way that can be effective in your discipline. In fact, we have a video from a student who presented last year. He's done and graduated, but he agreed that maybe he will come back and do another presentation. And what he did was he talked about low-stakes writing. So clearly he focuses on writing. That's his background. He was an English presenter. Well, he actually made it relevant to the sciences and actually made it even relevant to mathematics. And so we do have that on our website, and I encourage you, if you want that technique and that skill, to check it out. It's very charismatic. So although it's kind of a 30-minute video, it's definitely worth checking out. Aside from that, our TAs are eligible to get the teaching enhancement through the provost office. I work with the Teaching and Learning Committee, which is kind of overarching for the institution. It runs out of the Faculty Development Office, which again has a new name I'm unaware of. And so I do send out information, and you can, of course, attend any of those sessions that are relevant to the teaching. So just wanted to kind of let you know about those opportunities for students who want to have some more development in terms of their teaching. So I'm sure you guys have noticed multiple sticky notes. Like clearly, like for the last day and a half, I've been handing them out randomly, right? So how many people need sticky notes, right? There's only so much. But actually, these serve a purpose today. A lot of students, and this is anecdotal, so I probably have an N of about 75. I'm not talking to everybody. Who take a TA position not because they want to be a TA. It's a means to an end. It's how they get their way through their degree program. It's a way to get funded, and it's a responsibility that maybe a department demands. And so what I would like you to do on that sticky note, and I noticed a lot of people didn't bring pen or paper. So if you could write on there, and again, these are anonymous, please do not include your name. And actually, please do not include your department. I just want to have an informal assessment, and of the people here who want to be a TA, who are interested in developing as a TA, developing as teaching, and then students who, and I don't mean to put it this callous, but frankly just don't. It's really not an important part of their education. So if you could write on there that it's an investment you want to make, you can use any language you want, or that you feel like it's just a necessity, that you're not really invested in being a TA. And it's really anonymous, and so all I want at the end of the day is you can just come up here, you can even flip them over if you don't want the next person to see what you wrote. I just want to look at them to see what the calculation numbers are of our TAs. And again, do not write down what you want me to hear, which of course I would love to hear that everybody here is completely invested, willing to put in all the time and energy to be an effective TA and an effective instructor. But the reality is that my N of 89 or 125 or whatever does not share that. So you can just write that down, and then you can either stick them at the ends of the rows on either side, or stick them up here and I'll pick them up. And it doesn't have to be done, it would be good that it was done now, but it doesn't necessarily, you don't want to pass it to your peer, you can just stick it on there later. Yes?
Just a little like how long it would take,
Okay, no, good point. So, backtrack. The student asked about the college teaching certificate. The college teaching certificate is housed in the adult higher education program. There was a couple of the students out there who were handing you out the yellow pieces of paper. Some of them actually had taken the course. We were just talking about the college teaching class that is taught by Carrie Myers. And they really, really enjoyed the course. And in fact, she said it was inspiring, quote unquote. She's in chemistry. It's 12 credits, and it takes maybe, depending on how long you're here, one class per semester, or two one semester, depending on if you're just writing. And I left some forms out there on the table. It's just a one-page white form, and it has details on the courses that are being offered and the 12 credits for the college teaching certificate program.
So if you want, we could just come to you.
You can talk to me, absolutely. But if you were to talk to somebody, Dr. Carrie Myers is who you would need to speak with, and if you're interested, she'll get you motivated about teaching for sure. So from there, I guess I have a couple questions. How many people here, just take a moment and think about your best instructors and your worst instructors, and what made them your best instructors, and then what made them your worst instructors? You can write it down if you brought a pen. Or paper. I definitely can share some horror stories. Okay, so let's talk about what makes a professor maybe not quite as effective. What are some examples? Yes. So what the student said was that they're not really passionate. They're not really into being in front of the class, teaching. It seems like just a matter of what they have to do. Yes.
Just reading from a textbook when you could do that yourself in your house, or giving you 300-page PowerPoints with like too much information.
She said reading from the textbook and 300 slides of PowerPoint, with a bunch of text on it, way too much information. What else?
Being really disorganized.
Disorganized. Yes.
Not testing what they give in class. That's not fair.
Right. Yes.
If English is not their first language, doesn't mean they can't be a good teacher, but if it's hard to understand them, it's hard to learn.
Okay, so yes, that is an interesting comment. What he said, and I apologize for those who are in here who are foreign and have accents. What he said was that it's challenging sometimes to have students who are foreign or teachers who are foreign, and it's not that they're not necessarily good teachers, that has nothing to do with it, but being able to understand them in class. One thing with that is we do require at this institution a speak test, and it's offered through the ACE department. And one of the things is with the ACE department, they check to see that there is decent language skills. And with that, if I have any suggestions, just make sure that you're asking your students, was that understood? And then did you have a comment about that?
Yeah, because I'm a foreign one, and I totally I would probably require my university to hire a professor that I could understand, because as a foreign, I have so many professors that I'll be sitting there and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about because I don't even understand what you're saying. So I think it's not being discriminated, it's not being disrespectful. If you have an accent and there's nothing you can do about it. But I think the university has a responsibility for the students that they have to understand, so they have to kind of overlook that, okay, you're a great person, your knowledge is great, but the students would not get out of anything, so they should they should take consideration about that, because I have so many professors that I was listening and I'm like, why would you hire someone that, he needs the A, and then you're like,
Did you guys hear what she said? Okay, because it's kind of hard to hear in the room, but yeah, I mean, it's a challenge.
And I think it's not discriminated or disrespectful to not hire someone because they're actually so thick that you're not going to get out of it anything, and I'm like, that should be something,
Yeah, and that's why we do require the speak test, to avoid, some of those challenges that things like being able to understand a foreign accent. I had a couple more over here. Yes.
I had a professor who would start the lecture and then about an hour later would turn away from the blackboard once the lecture was complete. So.
Yeah, so talking to your students, yes, that would be one of them. And then a couple more.
I had a professor who always spoke the same way every single time, very monotone, so I fell asleep a lot.
Okay, so a little inflection might be nice. Yes?
What about professors that are able to pretty much embarrass students in their class? And if they're tenured and you talk to other people about it, and other students talk to, the head of the department about it, you get a comment about, well, we can't really do anything but we feel for you because we know this is going on.
I like your nonverbal cues, by the way. Yes. yes, in fact, that does become an issue. And one thing that we hadn't had on this campus for a long time was a formal faculty development group. And honestly, there is some level of, with the department head and the dean, where although yes, they're tenured, there is a method in which you can go, and that person probably will still teach, but hopefully there would be some level of mediation about the students. The unfortunate thing is students often don't want to write down or document things that are going on because of fear of retaliation, in terms of like getting a bad grade or not pass the class or creating even a more hostile environment. And so sometimes those things are difficult, and maybe actually Diane can address some of that stuff in terms of dealing with the challenges, or what kind of resources are available if it's actually being, the retaliation is potentially happening if a complaint is made. Yes?
For me, one of the big things I learned teaching is don't make assumptions about what your students know. I can give you a really, really basic example. Last year I was teaching philosophy of history, 18 to 23-year-old students, and they didn't know what the Cold War was. And I'm talking about it, and suddenly I'm looking at these blank faces and I'm going, fuck it. That's just what you have to deal with, but that's something that I was going in just assuming it was anything.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to just retrench it.
Yeah. This group was the students, if you're teaching 18-year-olds, were, I don't even know, how old would they have been, like 8, something like 7 or 8, when 9/11 happened. So you're exactly right. Like, there is just a whole different lovely context. Yes, did you have a comment?
Just following up on what he said in terms of what the students know, in terms of a professor in class I worked in, there was a course that I had prereqs for, that the professor was a math class, and the professor taught it on assuming and working knowledge of an advanced class that I hadn't had, and needless to say that made the course hard. So, and what your students know and really paying attention to what the prereqs are for the course you're teaching, so that you don't have a student who has satisfied everything to be there, and then is struggling because of a prereq that the professor made up almost. So it's not in the right. I had that happen. So.
Right. Okay. So actually, that's a really good point, and the assumption thing. So tomorrow, one of the sessions is what they call CATS, Classroom Assessment Techniques. And I will be running that session, and it's to get exactly at what you're talking about and what you're talking about. And that is to provide TAs, and we do, some professors will come, and what it is to provide a technique where you can start to get some information as to what your students know before teaching. And you can do it based on before a certain unit or section, or you can do it at the beginning of class. So you can tailor some of the lesson planning that you have based on what your students know. So let's switch to a couple good things. What makes a good instructor? Yes?
You're lecturing on material that isn't in the textbook, like bringing up new things, so you're more forced to pay attention during the lecture instead of falling asleep or just saying, oh, I already read this, I'm going to pay attention.
Okay, which is kind of what Rose was saying about how, and I don't know if everyone heard that, but really creating relevant and moving beyond the text to create some level of connection, and also to add to that, I think making it relevant. I had a chemistry TA who did a lot with breathalyzers and bacon. So making it, having a bunch of 18-year-olds, they could create some level of connection to the chemistry with things that they're aware of. So what else? Yes.
When they turn back your work on time.
Prompt feedback. they care about the progress and care about the student and are not worried just about the end year assessment and probably the evaluation.
And they're actually engaging, not just monotone voice, but they're actually happy to be there every day and they're engaging in their lecture. Not just do a chalk talk, but actually engage the class in a discussion.
So discussion, discourse. Yes.
They also have to be able to admit when you're wrong. I had a professor that if you would put wrong answers on the test, and when we would notice him trying about it, he'd get pissed at us because he thought we were being disrespectful, but we had it in the book. And he'd still be like, well, to my test. So,
Yeah, being able to admit that you're wrong or don't know something.
But if you say something wrong and object to, you have to kind of not get so defensive about it and just be like, oh, well, thanks for noticing.
Yes.
They're able to answer the question that's asked. To some extent, or if they can't answer it, they admit that they can't answer it, and they're not going to do it.
All right, just a couple more, and then we have our affirmative action. Yes.
Fair teachers.
Fair, yes.
Dialogue.
Dialogue.
You've got to bring them into assessing the information on their own terms. And then you have to listen to them. Because it's not just about speaking to them, you act them. Let them formulate the ideas and understand how they process it. And respond to that. It's really, really important.
No, I agree with you, and I think that the technique with classroom assessment techniques really help address the process of learning as opposed to directing them and just telling them the answer and lecturing them.
So my name is Diane Latender, and I'm the director of the Office of Institutional Equity. How many return TAs do we have?
They're all new.
They're all brand new. Okay, great. So our office is the office that handles all of the discrimination, harassment, equity, and Title IX. So that's what I'm going to be here today talking to you about, is more of awareness as TAs. I'm going to just say TAs because I can't remember to say GRAs, GTAs. So I'm going to just call you TAs. And what as TAs you need to be more aware of, and I was really engaged in what you guys were saying about the conduct of professors, and somebody over here was talking about they didn't know what the Cold War was. Was that you? I don't know if any of you saw the Chronicle this morning, the Bozeman Chronicle. At the very bottom, they have some university that does every year, they do the top 20 things a student wouldn't know, and some of them was very similar to yours, like, Star Wars was just a movie. Those kinds of things. And, anybody who's running the state is a woman, and, that kind of stuff. So it might be interesting for you to read that. I'm sure it's online. It's very intriguing for someone of my generation to read that as well. So today I'm going to talk to you about two things. One is, how many of you know what Title VII is of the Civil Rights Act? Now we're aging you guys, because you guys aren't in this era. It's basically the Civil Rights Act of 1962, which provided freedom from discrimination and harassment based on race, gender. MSU covers political status, and sexual orientation as well. But it's all of those. It's the act that came into effect at that time to cause awareness and attention that discrimination and harassment based on those are illegal. Thanks.
Yeah, you're gonna have
that's nice stuff. I could have winged all this. I could have winged it, but
yeah.
So here,
it's a messy property.
So here is MSU's non-discrimination policy, which I was just mentioning, covers all of the Title VII Act. So marital, parental status, religion, creed, political belief, mental handicap status. That is the act that we're going to talk about today as far as preventing and being aware of harassment and discrimination that may be going on because of these factors. The second part of my presentation is going to be on what we call Title IX of the Education Act. How many of you are aware of that? How many of you know what's going on at University of Montana with all of their crisis with sexual assault reports? And so that's what the Title IX of Education Act calls, is it's the act that prevents sexual discrimination in education. A lot of people associate that act with athletics because it's only been around for 30 years, and that's when it came into effect that people need to have equal access to sports, so we can have to have the same number of sports for males as we do females. So it came in light of that, but it really is about sex discrimination in classrooms, and it applies to all education. So this act applies to grade schools, high schools, etc. So harassment, when it rises to the level that it limits a student's ability to succeed in the classroom, creates a hostile environment in the workplace, that is what we call harassment based on a protected class. And when I say protected class, I'm going back to that very first slide that said race, religion. So if I was a person that needed a religious preference, I couldn't come to a class on a Friday night. I mean, I don't know, there's so many different variations. That could be an accommodation we make. They're protected because of their religious status. So we have to look at potentially an accommodation for that. So when I talk protected status, that's what I mean. So harassment is discrimination. So when we talk about the two, their harassment is basically when people act out discrimination. So if I'm a male, I'm going to act out against a female. I'm a female, I'm going to act out against a male. I'm going to act out some way and shape against one of these. If a student's disabled, we we say that they're late to class every time because they're in a wheelchair and we have 6 inches of snow. That's the type of stuff that we're signaling out somebody because of their status. So sexual harassment in higher ed.
Sorry.
That's okay. This is why if I remember this. I need to do a disqualifier too. So sexual harassment, how many think this is still going on? I know a lot of you are it does still happen, and it still happens in the workplace. And we have to dispel the rumor that it's just, a supervisor chasing me around a desk in a short skirt. It's not that anymore. It can manifest itself in many ways. So sexual harassment is still widespread. This is about 6 years old. It's the AAUW, Associated Academic University of Women, I believe is there. Most students don't report sexual harassment to a college employee, and most don't tell anybody. So, and if they've been sexually harassed, which includes sexual violence, which includes sexual coercion, which includes sexual intimidation, a student isn't going to primarily report that. And the people they are going to report it to are you guys. You're the ones that are similar peers, instructors, not as intimidating maybe as a faculty member, or something like that. So this is what the education is about. More than a third of the freshman students will experience some form of sexual harassment, and more than a third don't tell anybody about this. So awareness is what I'm going to talk to you about, okay? And I have to do my disclaimers. We're at Catapalooza, that's why I'm in this funky outfit. I usually have a little more professional. We have a booth over right by the Army Guard thing, so if you're out and about, we have dunking, discrimination pong, and we also have tossing out sexual violence ring toss, so you can win great prizes. So yesterday I wore more professional stuff than I got, so today I have to, if you see me again, I'll be more professional. And I also have bad allergies, so if I'm wiping my eyes, those are my disclaimers. Okay. So sexual harassment has to meet a couple different things. It has to be unwelcome sexual advances. So a lot of times when people come and talk to me, they'll say they're being sexually harassed. Well, this is where I talk about boundaries, okay? Everybody that comes into a school, a classroom, or a work environment is exposed to different boundaries, right? We all have different experiences. We've all worked in different places. You know, someone that grew up, that graduated from Melrose High School, no, is it Melrose in Montana?
It is.
Versus Oregon High School, will have different backgrounds, right? They'll have different experiences and different exposures. So when people say the key there is unwelcome. So I talk a lot about my experiences in human resources, which I've done for almost 25 years. My first job was with blue-collar truck drivers. My second biggest job was in a sawmill. Okay, so do you think my radar is kind of, my boundaries are a little pushed in what I think is acceptable and unacceptable? Pretty much so, because of the environment. Whereas a peer of mine who grew up in who worked in a pharmaceutical sales office with scientists, has different experiences as well. So it has to be unwelcome. So a joke, a one-time incidence of a rank joke may be unwelcome, but it may not meet the area that it's severe or pervasive as well. It has to be conduct of a sexual nature, and this is to meet sexual harassment. So people will say I'm being harassed, and I have to decide, you know, is it because of the sexual nature, or is it because of your gender, is it because of your religious preference, political beliefs, that type of thing. And then it has to substantially interfere with their abilities. So this is where we see people quit going to class, because they don't want to deal with the student or the professor or someone in the class or someone who's in the class next door. They start shutting down because they don't go to class. They start administering things that they can't succeed. You know, they move out of the dorms because somebody in the dorm room. Those are the types of things where it's interfering in their ability to succeed. And that's where we have to step in and do something. So conduct of a sexual nature just doesn't have to be the, you know, proverbial running around the desk. Remarks, sounds, you know, cat calls when people are walking by, facial expression, people staring. Stalking is a huge thing that we've worked with for the last 2 years. You know, people being stalked, whether it's physically or via text or via email or via Facebook. I mean, that's just a very common thing. Physical, of course, which is the touching, the sexual violence. Written, like I said, Facebook. I had 2 incidents last year that I had to work through with it because of what was posted on Facebook, which, you know, is difficult to monitor. I mean, that's the worst thing that ever happened to HR was Facebook. Because it's, you know, finally I got my own Facebook account so I could figure out what people were talking about. But that's the only reason. And then pictures and sex, you know, people, you know, putting up the, you know, calendars or inappropriate things on bulletin boards or that type of thing. So that's the conduct of a sexual nature. So there's 2 effects of sexual harassment. One is quid pro quo. So that means, you know, this for that. If you don't, I always say that, you know, if you don't sleep with me, you won't get the A. If you don't start going on traveling with me, you won't get, you know, the raise, that type of thing. There's an implied threat that if the person doesn't do something, they won't get the benefit of fairness or equity. The second one is the hostile environment, and that's what I was just talking to you about, you know, the dorm or in the classroom. The environment is determined to be hostile because there's some behaviors that have been happening because of that person's protected class. And I do have to say, a hostile environment has to be based on a protected class. So I get a lot of calls, because I do HR as well. I'm working in a hostile environment, and of course I jump up and I say, why? They're yelling at me. Okay. Are they yelling at you, you know, because you're disabled, because you're a woman, because you're a man, because of your age? No, they're just yelling at me because I'm not doing my job. Well, that's not necessarily hostile. That's more dysfunctional, which is not necessarily acceptable, but we deal with it on a different range. So a hostile environment is based on the protected classes. So we also have to discuss what is harassment. A lot of people will say, you know, I didn't mean that to be offensive. I didn't mean that to be this way. My intent was not to make them feel uncomfortable. You have to remember that it's not about what the intent was, it's about the impact that it has. And that's very key to a lot of, especially what you guys are going to be doing, because you're going to have, you know, piles of different people, different backgrounds, different moods, different ages, different genders, different everything, and bringing in that. So I was just talking to a student, a faculty member from the Billings campus who said, you know, people perceive her as having biases because of what she says. Well, I said, well, what do you say? And she said, you know, that something about the Republican Party. And I'm like, what does that have to do with nursing? I don't, you know, I mean, if you're bringing in those political biases to how you teach, there is that academic freedom, but it has to be pertinent to the topic. So the biggest recommendation I can give all of you is engage, dialogue. If it starts veering off what the content is, bring it back. Because I've had 2 situations last year where the content of the class was determined to be, you know, causing bias, causing gender bias, and religious bias. And it was content of the class, but the instructor just thought it was great that they were engaging. Well, they were engaging, you know, pointing, because there were 2 different class contents. So you have to really monitor that. There's effective dialogue, and then there's destructive dialogue. And always remember, harassment's about power. You know, it's always it doesn't necessarily need to mean a grade. It can mean, you know, promotion. It can mean training opportunities. I mean, it can go about at any level. But that's the bottom line, is somebody who's exerting any type of harassment or discrimination is trying to gain power over that person. So just some couple things to remember. I'm going to talk in a minute about sexual assault and violence, but immediately report it to me or Kaylee or, you know, your department chair, anybody that you know, if you hear of any sexual violence or assault. And I'm going to talk more about that. Encourage the complaints to act immediately and not wait for it to get better. And this is where we see a lot of people will say, well, you know, maybe you should just go back in and see if they change their ideas or they change their mind. You know, why don't you just give it another week? Those aren't the types of things. If you see that somebody feels that they're being discriminated or harassment, it's not your job to determine if it's you know, really meets those criteria. It's your job to say, you know, let me report this to the person who can help you. Inform your faculty member, department head, or director. Establish an open door policy and keep it open. That's my biggest piece of advice I can give you. I don't know if all of you have the luxury of an office, but I don't know if any of you know who Dr. Jim Rimpie is. He's the vice president of student success. Anybody? No. Okay. Well, I was talking to him yesterday, and he's been in higher ed for over 30 years. And he said, that's the first thing I learned when I was a graduate research associate. Never shut the door. And when I walked into his office yesterday, he said, can I shut the door? So he asked people. So it's very important. There's a bunch of people around, great, but the biggest problem we get into is when people are behind closed doors and you don't know what's said, how it's said, who it's said to, and you know, then it comes up, well, the door was closed. So that can mean an intent. You know, it doesn't necessarily, but there's that implication. And then treat all students the same. I mean, this is the biggest challenge anyone has. I have this challenge, and this is what I do for a living. You know, there are people that irritate the hell out of you, and there are people you like, and there are people that show up for class on time, and those that don't. You have to make sure that you're equitable across the board. You cannot promise confidentiality. And that's really key in the next section I'm going to talk about. So if somebody comes up and says to you, I want to let you know about something that happens, but I don't want you to tell X, Y, Z, you know, Dr. Rimpa or somebody. You cannot guarantee that. You need to just say, I might have a duty to report this, but just so you know that. And sometimes, most of the time, it's something that you don't have to. It's just them talking to you, getting ideas and feedback. Take it seriously. This is what I said earlier. Don't put your own values or your own impressions or your own ideas on what they're saying. Do not send them back to the harasser. This was an old-time thing that supervisors used to do. Like, why don't you just go talk to Sam or Joe or Sally and see, if just talking it out will be better. I mean, that's the worst thing that we could do if they feel they're a victim of discrimination and harassment. Don't make excuses for their behaviors. Just last week, well, this is who I am. I'm known for this. I'm that. You don't. If somebody comes to you, you don't say, "Well, Diane is a practical joker. I think you're just taking her humor wrong." If I'm being offensive, remember the impact, the values, what they bring to the classroom. If I'm being offensive to that person, I'm being offensive to them. You can't just say that's how they are. Monitor your own behavior. This is what we all are challenged with, especially in a college town, especially in a college environment. You run into students, you're going to get asked to parties, the proverbial Facebook invite, those types of things. You have to make sure you monitor what you do because you are in a position of power. How's that for giving you confidence? So you're perceived as a person in a position of power to these students. So, attending parties and that type of stuff is not necessarily in your best interest, but you also need to have a life. So this is where you need to measure what you do and how you do it. Waiting for a report may not be enough, so this is where your radars are up. You see things that are more than casual interactions. You see some student who every day gets a gift from another student, or there's flowers on where they usually sit, and the other students, the students moving around trying to avoid somebody. Those are usually signals that something might be happening. So that's where you should reach out to that student. And then just the sexual comments. That's what I was talking about. The effective dialogue can also cross the line of being non-effective. Consensual relationships, of course, this is another thing that we run into with the nature of what we do. People who are in a position of authority, teaching, supervisors, anything like that, they decide that they're going to, they have an interest or they want to pursue a relationship with somebody who's in their class, works for them, that type of situation, that needs to be self-disclosed. And we have a lot of different remedies for that. We can move into different sections. We can get a different faculty member. We can remove the line of authority. So if you decide you're in a consensual relationship with a student, please disclose that to Kaylee. Required training. Did everybody get my hand up? Yes, no? The little half sheet. You are required to go online and take this training within 15 days. I would highly encourage you to take it before you start teaching. It takes about 40 minutes. It's discrimination and harassment training. We do monitor this, so if you don't take it, tell Kaylee and she'll get after you to take it. So it's through the My Info, my app, so go out and take that as soon as you can. And you can access this, via home computers. So I just talked mostly about Title VII. Now I'm going to talk to you about Title IX. Last April, we received what we call a Dear Colleague letter from the Office of Civil Rights. And the Dear Colleague letter is basically something that comes from the federal government that says, here's this rule, here's this law, you guys aren't quite doing enough. So this is basically heads up because we're going to start coming down on this. And the Dear Colleague letter focuses on sexual violence. And primarily what drove them to do this was the high increase of the sexual harassment, assaults, sexual coercion that people were having happen to students, and the schools weren't doing enough. So we have had to basically reroute everything we do, and you'll see a lot about this in the coming weeks about Title IX. In fact, we're going to have some online programs, so you'll be taking that. But Title IX prohibits sex discrimination. Remember I said this at the very beginning, in education. So this is specific to sex discrimination. So this doesn't cover age and political belief and marital status. This is specific only to sex discrimination. So student by faculty member, student by student, faculty member by student. It doesn't matter who's interplaying in this. It has to involve a student, okay? So I mean, it could be a student on a trip, a university-sponsored trip, that we bring a guest speaker in, and that person sexually harasses, assaults, something. We are responsible for that situation, so this falls under Title IX. So it goes outside the classroom, it goes into the dorm rooms and everything. So it really doesn't have, and I need to say this as well as far as harassment and discrimination, there's no magic potion to it. It's not just female to female, or female to male, male to female. There's a lot of same-sex harassment that happens. So sexual harassment or any type of harassment is not necessarily one gender, it can be age, it can be anything. So Title IX prohibits gender-based harassment, which includes the verbal, nonverbal. So all of those things we just talked about that are necessarily could go across outside the line into political and all that, this is specific to sexual discrimination. So that includes sex stereotyping, you know, all men can't cook, you know, all females can't be scientists, you know, those types of things where people start making those very broad statements. When it's based on gender, that can be perceived as sexual discrimination. So I mentioned sexual violence earlier, and for those of you who don't know, the Board of Regents, probably at the end of last year, maybe this summer, the Montana Board of Regents came up with what they call a Title IX policy. So I would encourage you to go out and read that. That's on our, we're called the Affirmative Action. Now we're under Office of Institutional Equity. We have a Title IX page that talks about President Cruzado's note, which I believe will be distributed again, about mandatory reporting, which I'll talk about, the Title IX policy of the Board of Regents. So this is where the energy is going to be focused. So sexual violence can mean contact of a sexual nature against a person's will or where they're incapable of giving consent. It also includes rape, sexual assault, or sexual coercion. So when we talk violence, we're talking a big umbrella. So the Montana Human Rights Bureau determined last year, based on some cases that they had, that no student shall be subject to sexual harassment or intimidation by another student when an agent or employee of the educational student or institution knew or reasonably should have known. So that kind of threw us a little bit because we thought, you know, who are agents? Title IX talks about a responsible party. You know, at what level do we have these people in our environment? So that was the Montana Human Rights Bureau. So any employee on the campus that's informed of an allegation of sexual violence involving a student must report that promptly to me. And I am also the Title IX coordinator for this campus. The only people that are exempt from that are rape counselors, our voice center. Does everyone know what that is? You know, medical providers, and to some degree, police officers, depending on if it's a health or safety concern on our campus. So the Title IX policy from the Board of Regents was that every person on this campus that's employed by our campus will report this. It's no longer the responsible person, well, you know, is that at what level do we cut off responsibilities? So anybody who's in a capacity as an employee of the institution needs to report this. And that is huge. So if you overhear, you know, students talking about a party and somebody thinks that they were, you know, the huge thing is that's going on in the drugs, what do you call it? In the beers and the drink. You know, people don't remember it all. Yeah. So that's a huge thing, and they'll come in and they'll say, well, you know, I don't remember what happened, but I ended up. Those are the types of things that you need to be aware of. Because if they come to you in your capacity as a TA, you are an agent. Yeah, I can deputize you all as agents. You are a representative of the institution, and you will have a duty to report that. Keep that in mind. What you report is just, I was in this class on this day. If you know the student's name, great. You know, I overheard this happen. Or they came into my office and told me about this. And, you know, that's where you have to say, I may have this duty to report this. So whatever you tell me, I may have to follow through. And then we're required to take all reasonable steps to investigate and respond. That's where I come in, and I will talk to the students. I will do an investigation, and I'll talk to the people at the party, whatever it takes to decide if another student was a victim of this. So what we need to do to prevent a lot of this is we would step in. We might move the person out of the dorm. We might provide escorts. We might encourage them to go to counseling services. We may change a class structure so that they don't have to be in the same building, in the same class, that type of thing. So these are the remedial efforts. Is another thing that the federal government told us that we aren't good at, is we need to step in and not only stop the behavior, but we need to also prevent it from happening again. And one of the roles of my position as Title IX is I'm responsible to see, you know, if we have a systemic issue on this campus, if I hear from, you know, a college, that there's a person, you know, that's the third time I've heard it from 3 different people, faculty member, a TA, and a staff person. You know, I might say, I think we have a problem with a student on our campus because they're all different victims, but they're all the same. Leslie calls them perpetrators. I call them the excused students. So it's my job is to make sure that if there's a problem on the campus, if we have a series of you know, rapes going on, that could be a thing that we need to communicate, of course, but that we step in and try to make remediation efforts. Finally, retaliation. So these are the people that come and talk to you about something or talk to anybody about anything. And I think, Kaylee, weren't you talking about this a minute ago, retaliation, faculty? I didn't hear the question, but I think it was something about the faculty
is it doing a good job?
Right, and then they hear about it, and then they take it out on the students.
Exactly, yeah.
So that's retaliation. So it could be, you know, this can go across just like that example was, or it could be, you know, that they filed a complaint against another TA or a friend or a faculty member, and you're going to really, because they got fired or whatever, we don't usually fire people right away, you know, you're going to take it out on that person. So every student has freedom from retaliation from any type of complaint. So these are the 2 policies that you need to be aware of. One is on our website, they're both on our website. One is the affirmative action policy that talks about complaints and harassment, and the other is about Title IX. And so how's that for a lot of information in a short period of time? So any questions, concerns, issues? Oh, yes.
Just out of curiosity, do you guys coordinate with different community groups like Haven and Club Center?
Do we partner with them? Our primary contact will be the Voice Center, and they do that.
And they coordinate?
Yeah, they coordinate with that. But, you know, as somebody, I mean, if you're talking to somebody, you know, that if any of you aren't familiar with the Voice Center, they're phenomenal. They're incredible people. They are people that can come in and advocate. So if it's 2 in the morning and you're hearing this, you know, refer to the Voice Center. Get them that care and that need that they have. The Voice Center will connect with us as well. But they also work. I mean, there's the Help Center that's downtown, well, off the beach. And there's also Haven, which is a domestic violence center. So thank you for bringing that up. The key is to make sure the students being taken care of, and then we'll come in with the policy stuff. Any other questions? Yes?
So let me see if I get this wrong. If one student is harassing another student, all you guys do is change class. And
No.
you don't kick the other student out of
No,
the
that's remedial efforts. If we got a complaint that 2 students in a class were harassing, we would remove one of the students and then do an investigation. So we have to do, because an investigation can take a month. So we don't want that student to have to keep coming to that class while we decide what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. So those are just simply remedial, remove them from the problem, remove them from the situation, and then we will start our process. So that's what it is. And we're not, we just don't move people and then hope it doesn't happen again. That's what we go for. Any other questions, concerns? I am located, oh yes.
I was just going to ask where your office was.
Yeah. I'm located in Hamilton Hall, which is right across from the SEB on the main floor. We're right next to Gallatin College Programs, if anyone knows where that is. And our names are on the doors, so stop by, email, let me know, come by our booth, win big prizes. They're fun prizes too. We have blow the whistle, report sexual violence, we have first aid kits, and we have toolkits. So you guys can win if you play the games. So I think Leslie's coming at some point, or what do you think? Yeah. Thank you for your time. I know this is a lot of stuff that's just like, how does this apply to teaching, and I need to be a better, it all does at some point, and if I've just, educated a couple of you that are in this situation, I've done my job. But if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to, you can generate it through Kaylee. Kaylee knows where I am, and we can help you work through it. So thank you.
Good morning. Welcome to MSU. The first thing I'm going to talk about, the university has a bunch of policies that apply to student-teacher interactions, to employee conduct, etc. And I'm going to hit the highlights of the ones I think you ought to know about. The first one I want to talk about is called FERPA, F-E-R-P-A. Stands for Federal Educational Rights and Privacy Act. And it is the federal law that governs the confidentiality of educational records. Educational records, as defined by this law, is any record that identifies a student and contains information about that student. So that's virtually every record the university has. The general rule is that those records are confidential, may not be released to third parties without the student's advance written consent. So what that means is that you could not, for example, discuss a student's progress in your class with a reporter from the Bozeman Chronicle. You couldn't discuss anything that's contained in the records regarding that student with a reporter from the Bozeman Chronicle. But it also means you can't discuss those same things with their parents. Because once they matriculate into the university, the rights to privacy reside with them, not with their parents. There are some, yes?
How does that change with respect to whether or not they're a minor?
Yes, once they matriculate, whether they're a minor or not, they obtain the rights to privacy. So if they're a university student, they have their own rights to privacy. So that's a good question. The other thing you should know is that there are a few exceptions to release of information. But it would be my recommendation that you do not release any information without checking with your supervising faculty member, because they can be tricky. I'll give you some examples. There's a whole bunch of information that we call like directory information. That's how that's termed in FERPA. And that's things like name, address. If they receive an award, we're allowed to talk about that. I think we can talk about that they're enrolled. Some of those kinds of information can be released, and there's a list of that. But most things cannot be released, and you should be very careful about that. And that means, even careful about if you have documents on your desk, don't return tests with names on them. If you're going to post grades, you have to come up with a method to post grades that cannot identify the students. You can't use GIDs. can't use social security numbers, you can't use portions of the GID because there's a mechanism to establish GID. Everyone know what a GID is? That's the college ID number. Here they call them GIDs. There's a mechanism to set those that you could crack if you have the last 4 digits. So if you want to post grade, you need to give all your students a number that's randomly assigned so you can post grades without revealing to other students what the other students' grades are. So those are some of the issues that you need to look at. There is on the web, there is a FERPA tutorial. And if you just type in FERPA tutorial, it is a short opportunity to learn the basics of FERPA, and then there's a little test at the end. And I recommend that all of you do that. Take that test, learn the FERPA basics, and then it also allows you to register that you're taking the test. So it'd be a good thing for you all to do. The other thing I want to talk about is that there are rules that govern student trips. I don't know if you will ever be involved in a student trip, but you might be. And if you are, then first of all, you wouldn't normally take a student trip without working again with your supervising faculty member. But if you're involved in a student trip, you need to look at the requirements for student trips. There's some things that need to be done before you go. You need to work with the various students on how they're going to get there and some of those things. And that's all covered under the university policy on student trips. If you go to type in student trips, you'll get this policy that talks about student trips. The other thing you should know is that there are rules that govern student conduct. If a student acts in a way that would violate the student conduct code, they're referred to the dean of students, and they're subject to discipline through the dean of students office. So if a student is unruly in your class or engages in some kind of violent behavior with regard to other students in your circumstances, then there would be an opportunity to refer that to the dean of students to be handled. There are also rules that govern cheating. Those are violations of the student academic code. If you discover cheating in your class, plagiarism in your class, you need to work with your faculty member. That needs to be addressed, and there are a series of policies that deal with that. I also want to point out some of the liability issues related to your performance here. You're providing services to the university. If a student is injured in your class, even a minor injury, it's important that you file an incident report, and an incident report is available online. You should report it to your supervising faculty member also. Yes?
Does that include if they're doing homework for the class you're teaching?
That's a good question. I think, the lawyer's answer to everything is it depends. So I would say it depends. If they're engaged in some kind of homework that you have directed them to go to this place and do this homework and they get injured there, I would say yes, you would want to report that. If they're just at home doing their homework and they get injured, not so much. If in doubt, call somebody. Okay, the other thing is if you are injured, you should also report that. There's an incident reporting form for that as well. And if you were injured for any reason, it doesn't seem like a big deal at the time, go ahead and put in an incident reporting form. You are all covered by the workers' compensation program of the university. So if you are injured on the job, you have coverage under the workers' compensation program, but you need to report it, and there needs to be things that need to be done. Just so you know. Let's talk about liability. Let's say the worst thing happens. You're engaged in something and a student gets injured and the university gets sued. What happens to you? Well, you're covered. You would have the university is covered by a self-insurance fund, so it does its own insurance, but all of the agents of the university are provided with defense and they wouldn't pay any judgment, etc. It is important to work on safety issues in the classroom, of course, to avoid that situation where students are injured. If you're involved in labs, you really need to go over all the safety issues in your lab, make sure your students understand it, do not be lax about safety, make them wear the glasses, make sure they know all the stuff they're supposed to do. And again, if you find yourself in a situation that it somehow doesn't seem like it's right or there's something of concern to you, please do not hesitate to talk over that with your faculty member. And if for any reason you feel like you don't get a response that you think is appropriate, feel free to go to the department head or the dean. You know, that's an important thing to think about. If you feel like you're not getting the right kind of response, just to make sure there's a double check on that. And so that would be fine to do as well. The TAs and GRAs at this institution are in a kind of an awkward legal place right now. There was an effort to organize the GRAs and GTAs into a union, and that effort was successful. There is currently pending, however, a court case that is making a determination on whether or not GTAs and GRAs meet the definition of employee for purposes of the collective bargaining statutes that govern public employees at Montana State, well, at all state institutions. So that is currently pending, and the union vote has been taken and has been successful, but there will be no negotiation of any union contract until the court case is completed. And I have no idea how long that's going to take, but I'd let you know that there could be that you may be covered by a union contract, or at least a negotiation of a union contract over the next few years. Let's see what else. Oh, the other thing I just wanted to talk about just a little bit is that you might be approached to provide what we call accommodations for a disabled student. And on this campus, if there is a disabled student, and that means a student who has some kind of disability that might be, sometimes it's obvious they have a disability if they use a wheelchair, etc., but sometimes it's not so obvious, learning disabilities, other kinds of disabilities. On this campus, we have an office that handles all of student disabilities. It's called Student Disability. Now I can't remember what it's called.
Disabilities, Veteran, and Reentry Services.
Thank you. Disabilities, Veteran, and Reentry Services. And a student who might approach you says, gee, I have whatever. I have a learning disability and I'd like to have some kind of special compensation for that. You should refer them to the Disability
Veteran Reentry Services.
Yes. And they will look at their materials and make a determination as to whether or not they get an accommodation. And if they give them an accommodation, they'll give them a little card that says they've been approved for an accommodation. Sometimes that means more time on tests. Sometimes they might have to take a test away from a crowd. They have to have a quiet room. And we have all those things available to students. But my recommendation is do not be making individual adjustments on the basis of disability. It's important that we follow our usual procedures so that we have them documented and we show what accommodations they're entitled to. That's all I usually cover in this section, but I'm open to any questions you all have. Anything that you need to know about something?
I might have missed it, but you said just type in insert report or FERPA or student trip, type it into where?
If you go to the homepage.
Or just
Homepage. Just homepage on the Finder.
And that will, if you do the FERPA tutorial, that will give you personally credit if you just do the homepage.
Yeah, you just get, I think you print out a certificate. I haven't taken it in a while, but that's what I do. You print out a certificate and hang on. Yeah, and hang on. Anything else? I gave the list of sites and Haley's going to put that up on the website. So if you want to go to the website when she gets that up. It'll show you everything I've talked about today. And there's a few more resources that would be helpful to you, some teaching resources that are available and stuff.
So like on here, she did put the student conduct and academic grievance procedures. I would suggest just reviewing that. And then there will be a TA section on our webpage that'll have this available, and then also Diane Latender's presentation available, and also the link on that little sheet that you got for the sexual harassment and discrimination training.
Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. Okay, so we have a few more minutes, and actually Brenda York from Disability Veterans and Reentry Services will be coming by to talk more about the blue cards that are cards that Leslie was talking about, but then also some of the things with veterans and some of the students. But in the meantime, I have a short exercise, and then we'll take a short break right before Brenda gets here. I would like you to take out a piece of paper, or if you brought paper, and a pen. It doesn't have to be very big because we're just writing just a few notes. I mean, it could be this big, half a page, whatever, share, right on the back of something. Actually, the sticky notes are large enough. And then did everyone sign in at the front desk? Because if you didn't, just make sure to do that before you leave today. Because we track all of our TAs. So, okay, so this is what I'm going to consider quadrant 1, 2, 3. Why are you laughing? Well, here's the thing. It's just like if you were here yesterday, I'm a spell check child. I can't even spell. So clearly my math skills might not be there. So let's just follow 1, 2, 3, 4. Not put down education, but I am in education. So in your first box, I want you to spend a few minutes and think about the things that you do well. And the things that you do well might be proofs. I mean, it doesn't, or skiing, or mountain biking. It doesn't have to be academically related. Just 3 things that you do well. Okay, under number 2, I want you to write down the 3 steps. You select one of the ones that you selected. So, for example, mountain biking. What were the 3 steps that you took to get good at that one thing? So practice, whatever it might be, the 3 things that you have done to get to a point where you consider yourself good at that one thing. Okay, how many of you are left-handed? Yeah, that's about right. That's about the number of the population you'd expect. So what I want you to do is take your pencil or your pen and put it in your non-dominant hand. And then in your third box, I want you to sign your name. So what I want you to do in the fourth box, just in your mind, think about something that you don't know how to do, or something that you would like to learn how to do, or something that you don't do well, but would like to improve. And then once you've identified that one item, what I want you to do is write down 3 steps of what resources you would seek out, or that you would do to get better at that thing, or to learn that new thing, or to improve. So write down the 3 things that you would need to do, or the resources that you would seek out to get better. Okay, is there anybody who would like to share their number 4? Anybody?
Yeah, because I need to work on it.
Okay, all right, thank you. What's your number 4?
Be less nervous in public speaking.
Be less nervous in public speaking. I'm gonna actually guess you weren't the only one. And what were your 3 or 4 steps that you would take to do that?
Well, I guess I'm telling myself, I like to sit in the back of the class because I feel more empowered that way and I can talk to you this way, but we're going to be in front of the class. And so, to me, I just need to know that I can do it, okay? That confidence that I can do it, okay? And 2, that my ideas are good and that I'm okay with my ideas and I'm okay with listening to their ideas. And just working on the public speaking, that I know that I don't have to stay right at that podium, that I can come out too, and I can sit down at the desk. At least the way I'm going to be able to do it. You know, I'll be able to form circles, I'll be able to move around, I'll be able to do this, and that they're all going to be nervous too.
Okay, so I'm going to sum up what I heard, and then correct me if I'm wrong. So what I heard you say was public speaking, and then the 3 things were to build confidence. And so how are you going to build confidence? How are you going to know that you're confident? What are you going to do to get confident?
For me, just doing it.
So practice. Okay, practice. Okay, so that's a way to develop your confidence. And then being okay with your ideas and being able to have discourse and be okay with listening and asking questions with your students. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, and then how are you going to do that to a point where you feel comfortable or that you're there?
Well, I think actually it's going to happen on Monday. You know, I think it's one of those things that you have to jump into, and you have to just see how you're doing. Or maybe reflect on past GTAs. You know, maybe reflect on past GTAs that we've had and we've liked. You know,
Okay.
Who we felt came comfortable and it seemed like they made it enjoyable.
If you guys could. Okay, so that's what it is that you're looking at previous experience, you're looking at people who have already been through the process, making judgment calls on whether or not they were successful or not successful, and being able to kind of mimic what they're doing. Correct? Am I hearing you correctly? Okay. So that is a perfect example, and it's completely related to what we're talking about today. Now, in the larger context, and can I get your name, please?
Sure, Kate.
Kate, what Kate just said is perfect for what we talked about, or what I asked you to do for number 4. Mine was incredibly generic and clearly has nothing to do with teaching. But what is the point of why I had you not only do 4, but do it this all? What is the connective piece between all 4 of these tasks I asked you?
You think about what you're good at, what you're not good at, and then how you got there, and then what you need to do to get there with something like
Okay. That's exactly it. But why would I have you guys do that?
You need to realize that your students are going to go through the same things. You're already good at your topic, but your students may not be, so it's number 3 to them. They don't know how to necessarily write their names or something.
Exactly. So the reason, it's exactly what you said, it's what you're good at. So you already can do proofs well. Maybe you're an expert at statistics. Maybe you're an expert at doing lab experiments for biology. Maybe you're a really successful writer. You know how to write well, you're good at developing your ideas, writing thesis statements. And then you have these freshmen who, well, I mean, some of their writing could use a little work. And it comes down to what this student said. I'm sorry, can I get your name too?
Alex.
Alex. What Alex said earlier, which was, don't assume what your students know and don't know. because often they don't really know the process of what it is that gets them there. That they truly are new in a lot of ways, maybe not all your students, but some of your students really, it's a foreign concept. And college is a foreign concept for if you're in a freshman class. So not only is the content, but the whole entire structure is foreign. So then we get down to what Kate was saying, and she brought up great points. You know, reflect on what you already know. Use these skills, you know, practice, encourage, show your students that these things are things that they can do to get better at what it is that they need to know. And then I wrote ask an expert, and you are the expert to them. And knowing that, you know, you're there to be available to them, and that there is a plan. Like you can actually just explicitly show them what the plan is. You know, you might not understand some of this, but if you practice, if you come to me, if you fail, don't get dismayed. Come to me. You know, there's resources on campus. We have it's called Smarty Cats. It's a tutoring service for students. And you as TAs don't have to spend all of your time tutoring the student, but you can help them find resources available to them, such as Smarty Cats through the Office of Student Success, so that they can ask an expert, that they can get hands-on, that their failure can be retried, that they can go in and start to understand some of the stuff that might not be completely clear to them. But I think just reflecting on the idea that they're new to this system and they might be new to the topic. And so it's about what Alex said, that you can't just assume what it is that they know. So that is just a little piece. And by the way, this is not, I don't want to plagiarize. Angelo and Cross 2004. It's an exercise that they give at teaching seminars. So I just wanted to impart that with you guys before our final speaker, Brenda York. And then also, if you guys could put those sticky notes at the ends. And again, you can turn them upside down. You don't have to share them with people. I just want to keep track of kind of the environment.
I always like being the last speaker right before you're dismissed from stuff. It's just great. I think I had this the other day in another group too. So anyway, it was right before lunch also. I'm Brenda York. I'm the Director of Disability, Reentry, Veteran Services, and ADA Coordinator on campus. So I have a lot of positions. They're always never boring. So quickly, we'll kind of go reentry. That's the smallest part of our job. It's for non-traditional age students coming back. We just offer resources and get them out to the right groups for extra help for time management, study skills, or questions they may have about coming back, especially if they've been out for a long time. And the biggest one they have is usually math and stuff. How many math TAs in here? Yeah, okay. So, anyway, we just kind of do offer a resource for them. The next one is the Veteran Services, and I brought some rack cards out. Last year at this time, we opened the Veteran Support Center in the Strand Union building. So we actually have a center for all veterans coming back to campus. We have getting the GI Bill, and this includes dependent stuff, close to 600. And it'll probably keep going up. So we work with them, we offer them support, we do all their GI Bill, getting their money for them, it's really important. But we also offer a lot of academic support and resources for them in the center. We ask that you pick up one of these rack cards that has our number on it. I'm the director, and then my supervisor for that center is Glenn Puffer. If you have a problem with the student in your class and you find out they're a veteran or something, please let us know. We're going to do some seminars this year for faculty and staff on veterans and leadership roles and stuff, but not all of them have PTSD. Not all of them have brain injuries, unless you read the paper. Not all of them served in Iraq or Afghanistan. So we're trying to do some educational pieces out there to get some stuff over that all veterans don't have all the same experiences, okay? The biggest part of the job, veterans is becoming really big, is disability services. We do all the academic accommodations or adjustments for students that are in your classes. What they will have, and we have a rack card here, and this is really important because you guys can get in trouble with this. And I will ask you if you were at TA orientation and did you hear me speak, if you tell a student, oh, we'll do that, and it wasn't on their card, and then you come back and yell at us because you're giving them an accommodation that you should be giving it to them. They will come to you with a blue card, it's called. And it's their DSS certification card. And it tells you what we have approved by law, based on their documentation they sent to us, to give them for testing or something in class. So, normally it's like 1.5 times testing. Not all disabled students get that. We have to make it case by case. And you guys heard Leslie, right, earlier? Yeah, okay. Case by case, we talk to them, we see, it could be semester to semester. So not all of them get all the same accommodations. Some get note-taking. You will be getting contacted by our office when they request note-taking, because this year we're having to pay we're paying the note-takers in the class, but we're also putting the notes on D2L under that student-specific name. So it's going to be a trial period for us to work on this because we can't keep up with volunteer note-takers and notes coming into the office anymore. If you do have PowerPoints, put them on D2L. How many of you guys are using D2L in all your classes? Wow, you guys really should use D2L. You all have it available to you, so talk to your supervisors about that. D2L, you can download your PowerPoints ahead of time so students can bring them to class, and this is good for all students and stuff like that. We encourage people, if you can do that, that's great. Testing, they'll show you the blue card. They're supposed to come to your office hours, not before or after class or anything like that, and sit down and visit with you. If you need to take it to your supervisor or whoever supervises in your sections and stuff, then you need to do that. But it's pretty basic. If they have extended time, and that's all they have, or a quiet room, you can arrange it yourself somewhere or use testing services. I will be going to Dean's Council and Assistant Deans because we're running out of spaces in testing services. In our office, we don't have the space to just do extended time anymore. If we only do it if they have special equipment. We have 2 testing rooms now. So we're trying to get faculty and staff, faculty more involved in providing just extended time, like in a conference room or another classroom, things like that. So you might be hearing that coming down the pipe from the provost office here in a few weeks. They have special accommodations like assistive technology for reading, for testing, that it is in our office, and they will bring you a proctoring sheet. We will get it set up. We need the test so we can download it, have it scanned into the software when they come in to take the test. If they do not set up the test correctly, like if they come to you an hour before you're giving a test, pick up the phone and call us because we go over a policy with them that they must set it up in a timely fashion. If we can facilitate it, great. If not, then they're kind of SOL. Because they waited till the last minute to try it. Some of you guys have 200 or 300 people, students in your section, and you can't keep up with it. They're supposed to set it up a couple weeks ahead of time, remind you a couple or 3 days before where the test needs to go, or unless you're doing it also, and get that going. So they do have some responsibilities. Student comes to you and does not have one of those blue cards. What would your answer? What would your suggestion be? Contact us. In the past, faculty members have been. And it's your prerogative. You can say, okay, I'll give you extended time. Understand, unless they have that blue card, that we have not approved it. And that means that you're being nice and doing it, but down the road they can go to another class and say, well, Joe gave it to me down in this class, why aren't you giving it to me? They haven't come to us. It also there's supposed to be a statement on all the syllabus in every class that talks about where they need to go if they have accommodations and what that notes. In the teaching and learning recommended template for syllabus, on your syllabus, your syllabi, okay? So go out and look at that and do put that on there. It just helps you so you're not inundated by people who are trying to get extended time that maybe we haven't approved or haven't come through our office. A lot of freshmen think that it's like high school, that they're just going to go and it's automatically there. We're under a totally different law than high school, so they have to self-identify. We don't. If you have questions on a student, don't hesitate to call. There's Nancy Philbin, Michelle Sorensen, and myself in our office. Say, if I have a student that seems to be really struggling to get tests done and everything, you can refer them to us. We can't call them in. Vets I can call in if you have an issue with the vet, but because of the confidentiality law for disability, I really can't go, oh, your instructor called me, I need to get you in because you're having trouble. Really encourage them to come and see us, but you certainly can call and say, hey, I'm referring a student to you, or what should I do with this student? So those are some basic stuff. Now we're going to get into what everybody always wants to talk about, mental health issues. We're seeing an increase, and you see it in the papers all the time, stuff that happens. We have increased on mental health issues on this campus. We will never tell you if you call and say, Brenda, I need to know what their disability is. I will say, you don't get to know. We've approved it, we have the documentation, unless we think you need to know. FERPA is very clear, and I'm sure you heard that from Leslie on FERPA today. It's a need to know even on an educational setting. We think if there's a student that would be a problem in your class or someone that we need to kind of just let you know about, then we will call you and let you know. Just know they have to behave themselves in class. They're under the same conduct rules as anybody else. Anybody with a disability has to behave themselves. Is there a reasonable accommodation that we can give them to make them behave themselves? Probably not. We have to do that interactive process. But understand that if you have someone that's misbehaving in class, concentrate on the behavior. And then make sure you're documenting and telling your supervisor or telling someone, and then calling the dean of students. What happens here a lot is, we'll get a complaint about a student, and we go take it to a behavioral intervention team or something. Oh, this faculty member, yeah, I've had problems for 2 semesters with it. Well, why didn't you call it? Well, And then, oh, I didn't document that, but boy, he did this in class, like 3 semesters ago. So keep track of that stuff, that's important, but always concentrate on the behavior, not the mental illness. And that's right. If you have questions, don't hesitate to call us, because it is a complex and it's becoming more prevalent. And we always see an uptick in calls from faculty and stuff after something like Aurora and Virginia Tech and things like that. But we'll go through it with you, we'll visit with you. If you have a student you're like really concerned about, definitely call us. That's something we can check with other departments if they, not necessarily academic departments, but with counseling and stuff. So there are mechanisms out there. We just encourage you to let us know if you have any concerns. That's what we're there for, because it's not just for the student, it's also to help you guys too, okay? Because it is complex and full of legalities. Stuff like that. Service animals is usually a question I get in this group every year. Service animals has become kind of a wide open thing now with the new law, the new ADA Amendments Act. So, if you have a dog in your class, somebody shows up with a dog in your class, you cannot ask if they're disabled to have that dog in class. You can ask, is this a service animal? And if they say yes, say, well, is it on your blue card? I have more control over academic settings than I do public settings. In a public setting, you can't ask to have any proof of anything. We encourage students that do truly have service animals on this campus to please have them have an apron on or something. By law, we can't make them do it. But I do put it on their blue cards if we have the documentation in our office that it's a service animal. So if you have questions, and you will see this because it's becoming a bigger issue, ask them, say, did you go through DSS to have this dog in class? You can say that. And if they say nope, say, oh, well, we kind of need you to because it's an academic building. The animals have to behave themselves, just like anybody else. We have a service animal protocol on our website. They can't be disruptive in class, and if there's 3 or 4, or if you have people that are super allergic to dogs or scared to death of them, you need to let us know that so we can work on a solution. It's just not the student with the service animals right. There's other things going on too. So it's a complex issue, and all I can tell you, if it's in the classroom, you may ask them if they've gone through DSS to have a service animal in the classroom, okay? If they have not, then it's kind of your, say that I'm gonna have to ask you to leave with the animal unless you're okay with it, and that's your call. But you will see, people can get aprons and say they're service animals for $25 off the internet right now. And there's nothing we can do about it, but I can control a little bit on the academic side of things instead of public like the sub or the library or out in the mall area and stuff like that. Okay? That was DSS, Veteran Services, and Reentry, and really 15 minutes or less. So, now what I usually do is open up for questions, because a lot of times people have a lot of good questions, but we just, there's so much that I could talk to you about that it would be like DSS 101. So questions? And I know you want to go, but some people have questions. This is really important, guys, because every one of you will have some students in your classes. This will increase the students we're seeing. Any questions? Haley, they're going to be able to pass the test tomorrow.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Yes, we have one.
So if you're like a writing teacher and you don't get tests, you have due dates and they get extended test time, you have to extend their due date?
No, we don't. We have not. They can work with you on it, and that's up to you. But because they get a syllabus at the beginning of the semester, usually with the due dates on them, they need to work that out to be able to get those assignments in. We're seeing more and more requests for extension on assignments, and we're still saying that's a faculty decision. Because what's extension on an assignment? I mean, do they have till, right before finals to get in there? That's not fair. It's got to be a reasonable accommodation. So if you get that, you can say, look, here's the due dates. It's due October 1st. What if you start writing it a few days ahead of time so you can get in on time? And especially if they have to use some type of tutoring or anything like that. But yeah, they have to, that's part of them learning the mechanism of time management. High schools are famous for giving assignments. We get the request all the time, well, I shouldn't have to turn anything in until the last week of classes. That's like, no. So we are still pushing that way, but until we get in trouble for it, or somebody comes back and tells us wrong, you can't do that. I don't know, but that's what we're still doing. So if you have any questions, or you have a student that does that continuously or is upset about it, definitely refer them back to us, or you call us and let us know. Okay? And if they're one of our students already registered with DSS, we can call them in a faculty office. It's just somebody that's never been to us, we can't just call and say, Okay? Other questions? Wow, that's a good question. I don't want to tell everybody, no. We're in the sub, we're in the disability services, well, disability reentry and veteran services. The main offices are in sub 180, which is right across from financial aid. And the vet center is 185, and it is right in between financial aid and us. Okay? Our hours are 8 to 5. We'll be 8 to 5 for disability services, Monday through Friday, but starting after Labor Day, Tuesdays and Thursdays will probably be open until 8 because of all the classes that are going to be given from 5 to 8 this semester because of classroom thing. And then the vet center is open Monday through Thursday, 8 to 6, and on Fridays until 5. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have one of the booths open, and do you have a card that says your information on it today?
Yep, they're all up here. Okay, you guys can come down. Do you have a table for information cards, or do you?
No,
Yeah, just come down and grab. We got one for the vet center, and we got one for disability services. Okay. Anything else? Oh, we had this happen last year. We haven't had it happen. If a student or their parent brings you their documentation, do not take it. Do not even look at it. Say, that is not my role on campus. There's an office that needs to look at that, and send it to our director. You don't even want to do that. Because we had a parent call, well, we gave it to all our faculty members. I go, why would the faculty members keep it? And the faculty members go, we don't know what to do with it. It's like, don't do that. Just say DSS. There was one other thing that my memory is going along with. Or just say not to do. Oh, if it's temporary, like you'll have this winter. Hey, guys. Thank you. Temporary, like a broken leg, because we have ski hills, or broken arms. Broken legs, sometimes they can't use stairs, and there's a few buildings that have no elevators here because we're an old campus. So refer them to us and we can help them. The broken arms, you do not need to send them to us to verify their arm is broken. And this is usually not TAs, but faculty members. You can help them if they need notes. You can talk to someone in class and get notes for them. Or you can call and say, are you already getting notes in your class? Can you do this? And sometimes with testing, maybe you have to let them use a computer. I mean, common sense. Math is a little bit more difficult, but we can work around it. We do help them. But yeah, they don't necessarily have to come over to verify that they're on the bank account from our office to give you guys to kind of help them. Okay? And you will see it all winter long.